Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We at BAVC are very honored to be in conversation with the Crip Camp team and with the People's Video Theater. My name is Brittany Rayome. My pronouns are she, her. I manage filmmaker services and digital marketing at BAVC. Just to describe what's in my frame here, I am a white woman in my early 30s with dishwater blonde hair and glasses. I'm sitting in front of my mantle, which includes a non-functioning fireplace, some large plants, and some other trinkets. Before we begin, BAVC would like to acknowledge that we're streaming to you today from the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ohlone people, who are the original inhabitants and stewards of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that we benefit from living and working here, and we affirm their sovereign rights as First People. Tonight's program is going to be live captioned. So if you don't see captions in your screen right now and you would like to, please refresh your tab until they appear. It's an issue with the software and the live captioning process, but it should appear soon, hopefully after just one refresh. Okay, in this program tonight, we're going to hear from Howard Gustav, former member of the People's Video Theater and Survival Arts Media, two pioneering early video collectives. We're going to hear from Nicole Newnham, an award-winning filmmaker and the co-director and producer of Crip Camp. Andrea Levant, a communications and inclusion specialist and the Impact campaign moderator for the Crip Camp film. Don Valadez, Director of Youth and Emerging Media Maker Programs at BAVC. Unfortunately, we will not be joined tonight by Jim Lebrecht, who's recovering from minor surgery, but we all wish him the speediest of recoveries. And with that, it's been 45 years since BAVC was founded as a way for artists and activists in San Francisco to collectively buy and share new portable video technology. And it's been roughly the same amount of time since the People's Video Theater was using that same technology to record the experiences and engage with the campers and counselors at Camp Gen Ed. Now in 2021, we at BAVC think that it's a crucial moment for defining the conditions of independent media making, for finding ways to democratize the creation and distribution of media, for amplifying the stories we haven't often seen, and for making room for those who've been under-resourced and underrepresented to rewrite the dominant narratives and reach new audiences. With Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution, the filmmaking team has managed to harness the power of archival video to make the past tangible and bring new lens to our perception of our present and our future. Not only is Crip Camp an incredible film on its own, but it centers impact from the onset of the project creation. The team has managed to inspire change in the world outside of the film. You'll find out more about the array of compelling programs they've built to support the proliferation of ideas sparked by the film. But first, here's Morgan Morrell, BAVC's preservation director, who is managing the tech for this event behind the cameras, with a short introduction to BAVC and our Preservation Access Program. And the film, Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution.
BAVC is now in our 45th year of operation as a community hub and resource for media makers in the Bay Area and across the country, serving over 7,500 filmmakers, freelancers, job seekers, activists, and artists every year. BAVC has gone through many changes in these 45 years, but our mission has always been to foster and create equity in storytelling. BAVC's diverse, innovative programs lead the field in media training for youth and educators, technology and multimedia-focused workforce development, visually driven new media storytelling, and the preservation of tape-based media in our state-of-the-art digitization lab. Established in 1994, BAVC's Preservation Department works with museums, artists, and cultural institutions around the world to remaster, transfer, and archive seminal creative and historical works on video and audio tape. Since 2014, with generous funding from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, BAVC has offered our Preservation Access Program, through which we offer subsidized preservation services to individuals, artists, filmmakers, and small organizations whose collections contain at-risk tape-based media. The expense of digitization is often a big impediment to equity. Magnetic tape was the primary mode of storage for the documentation of moving images in the second half of the 20th century, and as a result, there's a great deal of cultural memory and stories held on this now obsolete media. These memories will disappear once the tapes become unplayable. Stories by and about marginalized communities are the most at risk, since these communities often lack the resources to properly digitize and preserve them. Through this program, BAVC has preserved many rich, diverse, and moving collections, including parts of the GLBT Historical Society's videotape archive, documentation of Western New York's community television organization Portable Channel, raw materials for Pamela Cohen's film Maria's Story, a portrait of love and survival in La Guerra Civil de El Salvador, and of course, documentation of teenagers at Camp Jened shot on half-inch open reel by members of People's Video Theater in the early 1970s. As is the case with most of the materials we deal with, these tapes took a great deal of care and effort to play back properly. Many of the materials we work with on a daily basis are well past their expected shelf life, and we're lucky to have the decades of equipment and experience needed in order to properly handle and preserve these materials. This is why it's so important that the Preservation Access Program exists, and why we make an effort to connect small archives, artists, activists, and filmmakers to the program. Folks like Howard Gusta and Ben Levine, members of the People's Video Theater, and filmmakers like Nicole Newnham and Jim Lebrecht, co-directors and producers of Crip Camp. We're very proud to have had the opportunity to work with these people and many others. Now, let's watch the trailer for Crip Camp.
What, you want me to tell them what happened? Well, two people got cramps and they're spreading. We were all very hyper about it. And I have to go shower some people. I'll see you later.
I wanted to be part of the world, but I didn't see anyone like me in it. I hear about a summer camp for the handicapped run by hippies. Somebody said you probably will smoke dope with the counselors, and I'm like, sign me up.
Come to Camp Jened and find yourself.
There I was in Woodstock.
You wouldn't be picked to be on a team back home, but at Jened, you had to go up to bat.
Even when we were that young, we helped empower each other. It was allowing us to recognize that the status quo is not what it needed to be.
The world always wants us dead. We live with that reality.
At the time, so many kids just like me were being sent to institutions. It was just a continual struggle.
Most disabled people, like myself, are unable to use public transportation.
We needed a civil rights law of our own.
A rehabilitation program has been vetoed by the president because it was cost prohibitive.
We decided we were going to have a demonstration.
You get the call to action, to the barricades.
A small army of the handicapped have occupied this building for the past 11 days.
So many people from Camp Jened found their way into the building.
The FBI cut off the phones. The deaf people went, we know what to do. That's how we communicated to the people outside the building. The Black Panther Party would bring a hot meal. We were like this.
We are the strongest political force in this country.
We will no longer allow the government to oppress disabled individuals. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
What we saw at that camp was that our lives could be better.
If you don't demand what you believe in for yourself, you're not going to get it.
I said for pleasure.
You like to see handicapped people depicted as people.
Excuse me?
Howard Gustav has, along with Ben Levine, worked closely with BAVC's Preservation Department to restore and preserve a broad range of early video works. Howard is about to roll a slideshow showing a range of the People's Video Theater archive, including the footage from Camp Jened. Roll the slideshow.
The People's Video Theater and Survival Arts Media's archive consists of video produced throughout New York State and Maine during the 1970s. The 10 terabytes of content was preserved at BAVC and recently accessioned to the NYU Special Collections Library. Howard Gutstadt and Ben Levine, members of the People's Video Theater and co-founders of Survival Arts Media, used Sony Portapak camcorders, which at the time were cutting-edge technology. Our programs chronicle the counterculture and liberation movements that transformed the politics of America. The real-time capabilities of video allowed us to capture material and play it back immediately. The social feedback process enabled participants to shape their own stories on screen and to initiate dialogue or mediation with audiences and effect positive change. The archive encompasses a broad range of projects which were designed to explore the new video medium. They include improvisational street theater, community political activism, public access television, the Artist Craftsman Anthology, and live early immersive media performance with the Central Maine Music Power Company and independent video artists of the era. One significant project was recorded at Camp Jeanette, a summer camp. These direct and empathetic recordings are featured in the film Crip Camp, which won the Sundance 2020 Audience Award and was nominated for the Best Documentary at the 2021 Academy Awards. Now let's play an excerpt from the CBS Sunday Morning program which highlights the People's Video Theater recordings made at Camp Jeanette.
It is an unexpected sight. All kinds of kids with all kinds of disabilities at summer camp, having the time of their lives. The year was 1971. The place, Camp Jeanette in New York's Catskill Mountains.
Wow, Camp Jeanette was a place that was a utopia.
Jim Lebrecht, born with spina bifida, was one of the campers.
It was a place where all of a sudden the rest of the outside world seemed to just disappear.
When you go back into your
Judy Human, who got polio at 18 months old, was a counselor.
You were really cute. I really laughed when I saw the film. It was so funny to see me at 21.
And we are seeing this old footage now as part of a recent documentary called Crip Camp, short for the word crippled, which, let's face it, is not bandied about these days. Why did you call it that, Jim?
We wanted to basically let people know that this wasn't your average film about disability, that there was an edge.
Jim Lebrecht is not only a major character in Crip Camp, he's also one of the filmmakers, collaborating with Emmy Award-winning documentarian Nicole Noonan.
Jim made me see disability as a culture. He made me see disability as a community.
We're going to talk about parents.
Jim vividly remembered this Camp Jeanette footage made by a freewheeling experimental group.
We are the People's Video Theater. Whatever actually you really want to say about yourselves, let us know.
They captured Camp Jeanette kids revealing some of their most personal feelings.
I think that it is about what everybody wants to be alone and in their life.
In later moments, Jim Lebrecht got to shoot video himself, a camera strapped to his wheelchair.
Is this necessary? I mean, it's a simple one. How am I supposed to?
But Lebrecht had no idea what had become of the video after almost half a century.
And that was just incredibly enticing to me as a filmmaker. It felt like it would be the holy grail. I just spent night after night looking online.
She finally found it, and the footage became the starting point for the rest of the Netflix documentary, a project that attracted the Obamas as executive producers.
Now let's bring Howard, joined by Crip Camp co-director Nicole Newnham, to the screen. If you could both give us a quick visual description when you join us, that would be great.
Okay, I'm a elder-ish white guy with a white Panama hat, blue shirt, and sort of a light pale green leaf pattern textile behind me.
Hi, I'm Nicole Newnham, and I am a 50-ish-year-old white woman with blondish hair down to my shoulders, wearing a blue shirt and sitting next to a black bookcase with a Greek bouzouki instrument hanging on the wall behind me in my home in Oakland.
So in this section, I'd like to provide a little bit of backstory about the People's Video Theater's meeting with the campers at Jeanette, and a little bit of context for how we worked at the camp. So we were a collective located in Manhattan, and we're up near Woodstock one beautiful summer afternoon, and we stopped to get gas. And some kids happened to notice that we had Sony Portapack cameras and recorders, and came over, asked what they were. When they realized that we were able to make recordings, they invited us to the camp. So we went to the camp. We spent approximately 4 or 5 days working at the camp. And the intent was to provide a kind of process that, although it was cinema verite, it was kind of directed as much as possible by what was important to the campers. So we did that. And as you can see in the film, there's a lot of very strong and empathetic takes that were developed with the kids. And so we're fortunate to have Nicole here. And I thought I might discuss with her how our approach at the camp resonated when Jim and her actually first saw the videotapes. What was your experience with that at that moment?
You know, Jim and I fell in love with the idea of recreating the world of Jeanette through film, and before we knew which archive that the People's Video Theater had created there. In fact, I didn't even know what the People's Video Theater was. You know, when I committed to try to tell this story with Jim, and Jim had pitched the idea to me and to direct, and I got so excited by the idea that Jim had, that this liberatory experience of Camp Jeanette was connected to the story of the movement. That, you know, I thought there's got to be some way to tell this story. The still photographs were so incredible, just filled with like joy and community. And so we thought maybe we would, you know, cast young actors with disabilities and recreate the camp that way. And that was what we were working on when Jim mentioned to me, oh, by the way, you should try to, you know, find something or another. I can't remember the name, but this Radical Video Coalition who visited the camp. So when we eventually, you know, met with Howard and Ben, and Howard, I mean, I think our first meeting was so indicative in that I feel that we were, I felt at the time that we were meeting a kindred spirit, you know, who understood the importance of telling the story from Jim's perspective, the importance of getting the story out in the world, and someone whose orientation towards collaborative filmmaking with communities was similar. And you guys were so generous to partner with us and give us access to the footage. And when we got the hard drive and started watching it, I think we, you know, we watched all 5.5 hours without stopping, basically. I mean, occasionally we would stop and talk, but I remember at one point turning to Jim and saying, I feel like this is a movie. Like, I feel like I could just keep watching and watching and watching this, you know, and I don't know if it's just that I'm caught up in the story or if it's something about the footage. And over time, of course, we've had many hundreds of hours to ponder that question. And I think there is something so incredible about the fact that the medium was new to people, that it was a time of kind of social experimentation, and that you guys went in there with such a kind of egalitarian framework around, doing things like handing the camera to Jim and letting him film a tour. Having such a collaborative process that, even though this scene is not in the film, we saw a meeting that you had with the staff and the counselors, including Judy Human, where Howard, you said, some of the kids want to record a message to their parents and have this conversation, So all of those scenes that are so powerful in the film many of them were scenes that were really directed by and the campers, and were communicating things that they wanted to be communicated. And, that was extraordinary, especially for disabled young people in 1971, to be collaborated with in that fashion. And so there's just this like aliveness, about the footage. And I think what we took from the viewing of it was this overpowering feeling of the importance of community, and the sense that we were seeing the fabric of a strong community that had been created, and how it was strengthening this group of people and their perspective on their situation, and the oppression that they were experiencing, the understanding that they were coming to about their differences from one another. And so our idea about what we wanted to track and follow and focus on, and the questions we wanted to ask the campers today, and all of that, all really did come out of the screening of that material.
Well, I'm glad that happened.
Me too. It's amazing. I mean, I still can't believe that it actually happened. And it was so extraordinary that you were like right across the bridge from us. You could have been anywhere in the world, when we started looking for you.
I understood it took quite a while to figure out who we were and where were we, but it kind of worked out to everybody's satisfaction. I'll just add one note to our working process at the camp. Being a new medium for independence at that time, we're talking early 1970s. The real time effect of recording and playing back to who the participant was a central concept to what we were doing. We often use the word social feedback for that, because it helps people define themselves on screen and then take some kind of political position or engage with a broader audience. But this is something that's very difficult to do any other media. It has to be a real-time medium. And it was the kind of thing that once the campers focused on the reality that they could actually create their own content, like the message to the parents, or the hilarious stuff around the pseudo crab epidemic, which is another whole story. We were able to parlay that and amplify it by playing those tapes back to members and the whole community to create a larger kind of concept of who they were, which was being defined by them pretty much in real time. And for us, that was a central mission in helping people tell their own story, as versed to here's a script, act it out. Anyway, moving forward to the time in which Crip Camp project is really kind of evolving quickly, some really amazing things took place, and I'm really kind of curious about them. You worked with the Obamas a bit, showing them rough cuts, and I'm really kind of fascinated to hear, how did they respond to the material? I mean, there's sex in there, there's pseudo health issues in there, there's cursing in there, but there was no censorship that I saw based on the material. What kind of feedback did they give you? What was it like working with them?
Yeah, you know, I have to admit that every time I watch the trailer and I see the opening bit about the crabs outbreak, and then we cut right to the card with their names on it as executive producers, I have this feeling of like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? You know, it does seem incredible that I think that they really understood. I mean, Priya Swaminathan, who, you know, was hired to run Higher Ground, is just incredible. And she and, you know, her bosses understood from the beginning that that a lot of the power in the material was the kind of iconoclastic, you know, surprising, you know, full on humane nature of it all, you know. And we all were really committed to the idea, you know, that this film couldn't afford to let anyone sort of slide into their preconceived kind of tropey ideas about how they would look at disability, which would be kind of inspiration porn or tragedy porn, you know? And so things like the things that you captured, things like the crabs outbreak and everybody's kind of, you know, giddy teenage delight in it. Jim's throes of passion over his first girlfriend and having been separated from her, things like that. You know, it was that was the magic that they responded to when they first saw the footage. And we had actually not even cut an assembly together yet when we tracked down Priya at the Toronto Film Festival, because our executive producer had read that the Obamas were starting a production company with Netflix. And he said, oh, we have to try to get this in front of them because, you know, Judy Heumann used to work in the Obama State Department. And there were so many kind of overlapping values we felt between this story and the kind of stories that they tell and amplify and kind of represent, you know, this importance of grassroots organizing, a belief in the power of like a group of young people to go on and change the world. And we knew that they were committed to kind of elevating stories from marginalized communities and bringing new voices into the conversation around what it means to be American. So we were pretty convinced that if we could get them to watch it, they would love it. But we were still floored when she called us a couple of weeks after getting the tape and said, we cannot stop watching this and we want to actually partner with you and roll up our sleeves and make this film with you. So President Obama and Mrs. Obama did watch 3 different cuts of the documentary and gave us feedback, which was pretty amazing. I remember Priya saying, well, you're going to get some presidential feedback, and it's going to be feedback from the perspective of a, you know, a person who's like the only person in the world that has that perspective. But, you know, they really were partners. They never censored us. They never pressured us. They gave us insight. They asked questions. They wondered at times if you know, like, for example, an example is the scene of Amazing Grace being sung by Judy in the truck as everybody's in Washington, D.C. That was a place where they felt that there was some need for kind of like a spiritual kind of darkness before the dawn moment in the trajectory of the narrative of trying to get the 504 signed. And collaboratively, you know, we had always wanted to try that Amazing Grace truck sequence, but we had kind of, it just kept falling through the cracks and we hadn't gotten to cutting it yet. And it was their kind of sensibility and their idea that, by them, I mean Higher Ground's idea that there was a need for something like that produced that beautiful scene, but it was never prescriptive and never top down. So that was incredible, because to not only have creative partners like that trust you, but to also have access to that incredible platform that they gave us to bring a story that, well, I think otherwise wouldn't have reached such a large audience, you know, to such visibility was great.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful trajectory. So I think we're probably at a point we want to begin to transition into the impact campaign, how it was, how it originated, how it was shaped, and the kind of impact it is having currently. And I think that Brittany is going to introduce a short clip and the participants in the impact segment. But thank you, Nicole.
In the summer of 2020, the Crip Camp Impact campaign hosted a 15-week virtual camp experience that featured trailblazing speakers from the disability community. With nearly 10,000 participants, Crip Camp 2020 showed the power of committing to accessibility for all. In the following clip, Impact producer Andrea Levant will appear in her camp counselor uniform, and she will be quickly joined by a very special guest. Roll that clip.
Welcome back, Crip Campers, and a huge hello to President Barack Obama.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Andrea. I was hoping to see if there were going to be any s'mores. I guess virtually that's hard to do. One of the first films that we were lucky enough to be able to produce was Crip Camp. It was so moving to us to see all these young people, teenagers at Camp Jeanette who left camp believing they could lead a worldwide movement, finding their voice and awakening to their power.
Bringing the Crip Camp story to life means so much to our community.
What I want to do is hear from you about what camp's been like.
You have joined us on our 6th week of Crip Camp.
Hi, everyone.
We're continuing the work you see in the film with leaders of today's movement.
Always like to start with a spirit of gratitude.
We have over 8,500 people registered to join us for camp each week from all over the world. Making sure everyone feels included is our priority. This includes folks who are deaf and hard of hearing.
Image description, okay.
And blind and low vision.
A dress with a black top.
I have heart-shaped glasses, short curly hair.
I'm wearing a denim shirt. There's a picture of me swimming in Hawaii, which is where I was born. My hair is much grayer than it was just a few years ago.
President Obama, I think that there's somebody that you wanted to bring in as well.
Somebody who has helped to make unbelievable change in this country and around the world, and who just happens to have been featured in Crip Camp.
We want no more segregation.
How are you, Judy?
I'm good, Mr. President. How are you?
How do you see the relationship between activism and protest and social movements and government?
We learned very early on that we needed to learn how laws were made, how they're implemented, how to work with our city government, our school boards. We would never have been successful if it wasn't for coalitions.
Funding from Section 504 has led to sweeping changes in transportation, healthcare, education, and job opportunities.
I can't imagine a more important story to tell. Our greatest progress has always come from the ground up.
Now, joining us on screen, disability advocate, innovator, and Crip Camp Impact producer Andrea Levant, along with BAVC's Director of Youth and Emerging Media Maker Programs, Don Valadez, as well as returning to the screen, Nicole Noonan once again. And if Don and Andrea, you could do a quick visual check-in for us, that would be great.
Great. Thank you, Brittany. Wow, I'm so excited to be here, and what an amazing film. And I have to say, as a documentary filmmaker and impact producer myself, what an incredible impact campaign you all have going on. So I'm happy to be here. My pronouns are she, her, ella. In my frame, you can see a red velvet curtain behind me, a lavender wall, a black curvy shelf with stuff on it, and a print that says sustain. Yeah, I'm super happy to be here, and I'm gonna maybe I'll ask Nicole a question first, and then Andrea will talk about the impact campaign. Nicole, you know, when you and Jim and Sarah, when you were all working on this film, were you thinking about the impact campaign when you started? Like, was that part of the creative process? And can you talk a little bit about that?
We definitely were from the very beginning. And Jim and I were very focused during the making of the film around using the film's production as a vehicle for impact in terms of media inclusion of people with disabilities and representation. So with every institution we worked with, whether it was the Ford Foundation or the Sundance Institute, as we were fundraising and developing the project, we would have to make sure that the Sundance Edit Lab was accessible because, there had not been a ramp to the stage there. We would have to make sure as we were going to fundraise that the events at the, Filmmakers Lodge were accessible and trying to press that, so there were many ways in which we were thinking about impact, from the very beginning. But what we decided to do is to hold a brain trust as we had gotten to kind of the rough cut point around the film. And we had a bunch of stakeholders from many, many different areas of sort of disability rights and disability justice, and asked them what they thought the film could do. And we were really excited about the partnership with the Obamas. And we thought we were going to hear people say, well, there's this measure coming up, or, voting access is really important, or things like that, that we could kind of target our impact campaign around. And we were really surprised that the overwhelming answer that we received was no, actually, people still need places to gather and kind of on-ramps into disability community, and that there's no way for many people to kind of access the wisdom and teachings and kind of potential capacity building of a lot of especially younger leaders of color and queer folks in the disability justice community who had so much to offer, but weren't kind of given, access to platforms like this. And we were reminded by the people that we brought into that room, including Stacey Park, an incredible activist and one of the founders of the disability justice movement and a friend, that our story, by virtue of being a story about the kids at Jened and the folks who are friends of Jim's, was a story that was, predominantly coming from a white point of view. And a lot of the really powerful activism that we wanted to support in the world was in the disability justice movement. And so we had kind of a come to Jesus moment with our team where we decided, we have a budget for an impact campaign. And instead of hiring sort of impact consultants and impact producers outside the community, why don't we actually look for impact producers from within the disability justice movement itself? And I heard through a friend that Stacey was going to apply, and she said, I want to apply with my friend Andrea Levant, who's incredibly brilliant. And basically we just made a group decision that we were going to throw out everything we had planned pretty much and give, give the reins over to Andrea. So I'll stop talking so you can talk about what you and Stacey built.
Yeah, thanks. I would love to hear from you, Andrea. I mean, talk about like a campaign that really embodies the idea of nothing about us without us, and really took that and handed that over, and the campaign's beautiful. So I'd love to hear from you, Andrea, and yeah, tell us how you got involved and what happened.
Sure. So first, I'm Andrea. I use she, her pronouns, and I just want to provide an image description, visual description for those that it would be helpful for. So I am in my living room wearing a kind of pinky purple dress with the white kimono over it. You can see the strap of my phone case. I have on cat eye glasses that are kind of turquoise and purple and black. My hair is just below the chin. I'm a Black woman, and behind me there's a variety of things, including a new poster that I have that talks about entrepreneurship, which that I am, and a book that is called In the Company of Women. So excited to be here today. And yes, so when Stacey approached me about Crip Camp, coming on, well, honestly, she sent me the announcement and I had never heard of an impact producer. And so I did not even know what that actually meant. But, my background, my lived experiences as a a wheelchair user, have been my entire life. And then that around communications and public relations and outreach and youth development. So essentially, when I looked at kind of what it was, I'm like, okay, those are things that I can do. I had, not ever connected it in the film world before. But, I saw it and initially was, questioning exactly what it would look like. And I think Stacy, the amazing thing for folks that knew Stacy, and actually next week it'll mark a year that she left this side of the world, but she was able to see things and vision and see things in people and opportunities that I think we often didn't see even in ourselves. And so together we kind of just began dreaming. And for me, the introduction was actually getting a chance to watch the film before its release. And I remember, meeting Nicole first and having this amazing conversation, and then getting an opportunity to watch the film. And I was shocked at how, essentially something that had happened 50 years ago, the Camp Jened and the conversations that happened there. I knew, because of the work that I've been doing, over the past decade or more, I knew about the disability rights movement, but, in a way that a lot of people that have seen the film go, oh, I didn't even know about that. They didn't know about the 504 sit-ins. They didn't know about, who Judy Heumann was. They didn't know, about the ADA. Those are things that I actually knew, and I know Judy well. She was a personal friend, and yet it was the conversations, the things that it sparked up, the feelings that really resonated with me as a disabled person. And I was like, wow, they were talking about the same thing 50 years ago that I was, when I was in high school, that I was dealing with as a disabled person, that the people that I mentor now are having these same conversations around bodily autonomy and, just all of these things, community, and then how, coming together as a community ultimately affects this global change. And so I just knew that it was something that we had to get behind. And so our approach to the campaign was really, there were multiple things that we knew that we wanted to do. Number one was we saw this as an opportunity to elevate or to bring disability into conversations where that we've been wanting to forever, so that is in social justice spaces where they're talking about, racism or, any other kind of form of oppression, and yet disability isn't a part of those conversations. So, from a cross movement perspective, what could we do? And then, and how could we bring disability there? And then also, how can this really build up our community? And I think that was probably one of the primary things, is how can we take what was Camp Jened, the spirit of Camp Jened, and bring it into the present day. And so, all right, initially it was, what does summer camp look like, now in this world? Little did we know that like a week or two, into the project, the world would shut down and there would be this pandemic. And so, quite honestly, I remember kind of soothing the rest of the team, going, it's okay, we've got this, because disabled people are so used to adapting to, environments, and quite honestly are very accustomed to convening online, to making things accessible and in the way where everybody can participate. And so we saw it as an opportunity to really show that we're experts in when it comes to the height of kind of access and inclusion. And I think what worked well for us is that we we didn't have an impact campaign to compare it to. So we weren't these seasoned impact producers that had always done in-person screenings, or that had, used a toolkit in a certain way to make things. So we weren't going off of that. We were really just going off of what is it that we need? What are the conversations that we've never been able to have? What's been missing? And how can we address that? And then how can we address it in a way that is going to bring as many people to the table as possible? And, to Nicole's point, what are the stories, Jim, Judy, folks that we see in the film have a certain narrative, and yet we knew that there were those that were missing. And not so much even just then, but even now. And so that was where this disability justice centered framework came into play. And so we're making sure that at the kind of core of the campaign was around centering those, of us with disabilities that are Black, Indigenous, people of color, queer, disabled folks, and such. So that was kind of our approach.
That's so powerful. I mean, there's so many things in there. Just the, the intersectionality that you're talking about, the past and the present, and really understanding that you're doing something that nobody had done before. And I really have seen that in the campaign as I've watched it. Can you talk a little bit about the virtual camp piece? Because that seems, I've never seen anything like that. I love the camp outfit, the camp counselor outfit. It's just, it's sweet. And at the same time, it highlights this idea of that accessibility, like who's going to camp right now? How is that, so can you talk a little bit about how you came up with that idea and what that has felt like or looked at? And, I really appreciate the ability to just be present with what it is, who your audience is. So yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting how organically that came together. That was really, I remember Stacy and I talking about, doing an in-person camp where we would maybe bring 25 disabled people plus their PCAs, and we could do it maybe in Phoenix because that's where I live. And, it was like, and there were still kind of hopes that potentially that could happen. But, it was, all right, well, virtual is a thing. Zoom is something. Zoom was not new for us. She and I both, and some of our other folks as the impact team grew, we're used to working in organizations remotely. And so it was really, how can we create something where people can participate, and we can, have kind of educational moments, but there's still this feel of community. How do we, take a virtual space and make everyone feel welcome? That's really what it was about. And when we started out, if you look back at our original pitch deck that we created, the goal was to have 500 people, that would join us on Zoom. And it's like, as soon as we opened it, I can't remember if it was in the first week or whatever, but it was like 1,000. Okay, we've got to how big can a Zoom room get, And then it was like the numbers just kept increasing, and we're like, okay, we got to go from a room to a webinar. What is a Zoom webinar? Like we hadn't even heard of it at the time, by the end of and I remember Stacy also saying, and so we just started talking. What are the topics that we even within the disability community don't talk about, or that they aren't addressed, because we're focusing so much on, other things that are important, but, when it comes to disability justice in particular, and what's missing, what are the missing narratives? And so we just started brainstorming, a personal thing for me is around faith. So let's do something around disability and spirituality. Let's talk about intersectionality. Where does that term, come from? What does that mean? Let's oh, wouldn't it be amazing to talk to Alice Wong about how to find your social media voice? I mean, it's just, we just started kind of putting things on paper and then asking, honestly, our friends to join us. And then what happened was we also knew that it needed to be as inclusive as possible. And so we knew off the bat we needed ASL interpreters, and and then Stacy talked to a group of folks, and their deaf interpreters was going to be a piece. And so then we started, and we had the first week. And the first week we realized, there were people in the chat saying the chat is not accessible for screen readers. It was something of that nature, for folks who are blind or low vision. And so I paused in the middle of the first session and said, okay, we're going to take a pause so that we can figure out how to make this success. You know what I'm saying? Make sure that everyone can participate. And that was kind of became, the philosophy throughout the entire 16 weeks was, whatever we needed to do to make people, to ensure that people felt welcome. And so I think for those first 6 weeks and perhaps even longer, made adjustments. And we had an amazing team. Rosemary, who is on the team, was leading all of the background stuff. We had Sophia that was live tweeting. We had, I had outfits every week. And so I had Josie, who was, there were so many things happening to make it happen. But at the core of it was, really ensuring that we would get emails and people would say, can you add this? And I would say, can we jump on a call and you explain to me exactly what that looks like, or what that means and how. And so I think that it made people, a lot of times it's about people feeling valued, and that was really what we wanted to do. The topics were amazing, I'm sure it looked beautiful, whatever. But for us, it was about whatever we needed to do to make it feel like everyone's space. And then what we're grateful for is that non-disabled allies joined us for the journey, but it really was about us.
Wow, and that's the powerful part of it too. And I walked away from watching that film and definitely felt like it was a call to action. And now hearing how you're talking about it from within the community, from really engaging people. I love that the fact that your goal was 500 people. And the numbers we just heard in the at the beginning in the intro that Brittany said was like 10,000. How many people? And people are obviously hungry for this. Can you tell me a little bit about what are your goals sort of now and kind of moving forward? What are you hoping to accomplish?
That's a really great question. I think, what we're so grateful for with Jim, Nicole, Sarah, the Higher Ground team, Netflix, was that, and I've said this to them multiple times, I can only imagine what it means to essentially give your baby away, here you go. We've worked on this for, so long. This is 5 years in the making. And then to entrust us to carry it on is just, I can only imagine, because I have, I think about things that I'm like mine. One of the things that they saw early on was that, and I remember having this conversation with Nicole just around, they as filmmakers will, have other projects and things, and they'll move on in such a way, obviously Crip Camp being a huge aspect of, their work and all that they continue to do. But what do we as, an impact team, what do we as disabled folks of color see? And really what Crip Camp did was start so many conversations and bring us into places, into other work that we never would have, really would have been an opportunity for us. And so while there's Crip Camp and all that it has, done, it has elevated the need for virtual accessibility. It has elevated, just us as impact producers. And then also shown us other needs within the community. So we're working on, you know, what it looks like to kind of grow this work in a sustainable way, some of the things that have come out of it. You know, also, we've had folks coming to us just asking, it sparked so many more questions as well around how can companies incorporate this? How can brands do better at disability inclusion? And so it's really just opened doors in ways that kind of feel like the sky is the limit. And also just getting to work on other film projects. So that, in addition to, you know, Crip Camp, there's so much, and this is my Alexa, coming on. But yeah, if we have so many really cool things that we're aiming to do, potentially even, you know, internationally. So excited.
Oh yeah, internationally. I can just imagine like the need clearly, and also the desire of people. We have a question in the chat, and then I have like a final question for you as well. But I think I'll ask the chat question first. It's from the Attitude Foundation. And it says, how does the campaign measure impact? What metrics do you use to benchmark community attitudinal change? And I feel like you've started talking about that just in your own process of being responsive to people. But were there things, and I don't know, Andrea, if it's you and Nicole, but it sounds like, Andrea, you would be the right person to answer that question. And then I have a question for both of you. So measuring impact.
That's a really great question as well. We, as a matter of fact, we just had conversations around kind of what does it look like to formalize and build case study and, you know, stuff like that based on what we've learned, because it was intentional in a way that we were really focused so much on the quality that now we're like, oh yeah, I guess these are things that people would want to replicate and duplicate, and, you know, all of that. That wasn't like the numbers and the metrics was so much, you know, it wasn't the huge crux of, you know, what we were doing. So now what we're doing is really compiling, you know, everything hopefully into a way that is more case study specific that people can use. We have, you know, we sent out a survey after Crip Camp Virtual. We have just kind of kept things just in terms of, you know, grants and reporting and stuff like that. So now it is about, you know, determining what the numbers look like. But what we realized too is that like the measure of the impact is in the tweet that says, this is the most accessible, you know, this is this is the most accessible event that I've ever attended, even within the disability community, right? Or, you know, I mean, to this day, and I mean, it was almost like it's been almost a year, and people are saying, if you need to know what it looks like to have an accessible event, contact, you know, Levant Consulting. I mean, it's just amazing how much it resonated. And so for us, I know for me, it's always about the one, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that, talk about high praise. That's such a beautiful quote to have, and congratulations, you know, and I can hear it just in how you've talked about it. The responsiveness is part of it, right? And it seems like, I think sometimes people think it's such a big lift to make things accessible or to do these things, but in fact, it's really what you just talked about, which is about being responsive and asking and listening and adapting and asking people what they need. Congratulations, you know. I know that there are a lot of filmmakers who are watching this, you know, who would like to know, like, how do you, and maybe Nicole, that you can start, and Andrea, you can talk about this too, like, what advice would you give to filmmakers who are in this process about their, how to center sort of their impact campaign in their filmmaking? I just feel like this is such an amazing example of this work.
You know, it's really interesting because I think it almost ties into, you know, Howard's first question to me, which is like, how did the footage help dictate what your film was about? Which is by, you know, watching the footage and listening and learning and to the actual folks you're making the film about. You're letting that, illuminate what the focus should be. And that same thing about community is what came back from the community when we asked them, how could this film be, useful to you, is kind of incredible. And so I think it's almost like that same kind of stance that Andrea is talking about, and you just mentioned regarding access, which is it's not a checklist. It's like I really am going to listen, learn, and be responsive. And if we had planned out our impact goals and stuck to them, we would have never made the impact that we wanted to make, And I almost think the pandemic, was an opportunity to sort of throw out, what we told the people who gave us money we would do, okay, we'll go through and do that and tick the boxes, and just say, no, we're, Andrea and Stacy were like, we're just going to go with this. We're just going to go rogue. We're going to do what we think can be done in this pandemic. And they did something, so moving and powerful. So I would just say, keep that active listening stance and just keep engaging with, with the community that you're trying to reach and empower through your work.
Yeah, thank you. Anything you'd like to add to that, Andrea? I mean, I just think that that's the focus of what you've been doing, but helping other filmmakers thinking about how to do this.
I mean, Nicole really said it. It's interesting now because we have an opportunity, because of when we came on, because they did all of this, background work, all of this, the research and the brain trust and all of that. We came on like 2 weeks before the film, came out, which I know is very different for many, many campaigns. And so it's interesting now because we're like, whoa, we think about all that we did for Crip Camp with like no lead time, right? And so what happens when, filmmakers, if you have an opportunity to start early on with those types of conversations and bring in those people like as soon as possible, like, I mean, the sky is really, really, really the limit. So yeah.
Right. That's great. Yeah, you're getting a lot of comments in the chat, just like great, thank yous and things like that. Beautiful, comments. A couple of the other questions that I've seen in here are like, connecting, I'm going to ask you this one. Are there some after the fact materials or programs that are available that people can bring to their communities? Like, what are there those kind of collateral materials that people can use? And I know your website is amazing, and there's lots of information there, but yeah, tell me a little bit about the resources you have available.
Oh, yes. So I'm like, so we have a curriculum, educational curriculum that I think is really strong. There is a screening guide, I think, that's still up. One of the biggest ways I think that we continue to educate on a day-to-day basis and provide learnings is honestly through our social medias. Sophia that manages that is incredible and is continually posting. And I think what's so great about the social media is that it's the relevance within the community, right? So we're continuing to elevate the very present day stories. And also we have, for example, we do like Fan Fridays, which are people that participated, and one manner or another, whether it was through Crip Camp Virtual or continue to submit art. I mean, people are just still actively engaged in what we're doing. And so those are great ways. Obviously, it's just continuing. I personally think it's the folks that we even feature or that we had during the camp and following those folks, because that's really all I feel like we did was just bring together, like to build the community in such a way that we had an opportunity to amplify the work that's already being done. So it's really just keeping an eye out for what's already out there.
Yeah, I feel like the social media stuff has been great. And that's in the chat as well. Somebody was like saying how, what's the role of social media? And I feel like you explained that, like just build, amplify. I love that term, amplifying the voices that are already out there, amplifying the movement and making the connection between the past and the present, which I think you've done a fantastic job in doing. Another question in there is, people are talking about like, do you have any suggestions for films that have limited budgets and limited capacity to do an impact campaign? Do you have suggestions or ideas for them?
Do you have any thoughts on that, Nicole? I could speak on it, but I'm wondering since we came in later, if you had any thoughts on it.
I mean, they may be this similar to your thoughts, but just I think that in that what was great about being able to engage with like the disability justice community and say like we are bringing these resources that we've fundraised for to the table here. Still, there were things that I think other organizations would have been eager and interested to do that didn't cost money, So I would just say it's about finding those partners where it's really worth their time, because they can use a film screening or a conversation as a fundraiser, or, I think there are really creative ways to partner with folks. And I think that it's okay to not, sometimes I think people get a little bit, the whole word impact campaign or that term kind of sounds like it's this giant budget and it has to have it can be much more organic than that, it can, and you can kind of find your way forward. You do one event and at that event, you're listening to people and you're thinking about like, oh, okay, that gives me an idea. We could connect with public libraries, and then you partner with public libraries. And I think it's okay to do that. I don't think it all has to be planned out and fundraised for. And I think more and more in this kind of media environment, it's less like the films in theaters and you have this small window within which to do an impact campaign and then it's over. The films are digitally available for a really long time, and a campaign can just kind of like, can grow organically, and you may find your way to funders, interested in supporting particular aspects of it as you go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that, if there's gonna be an investment monetarily, it's in the communities that you're aiming to engage or try to reach. So for example, we always say like pay disabled people, because in our, a lot of times we are, sought out for volunteer opportunities, and this is a great resume built, like that whole thing. And so it's pay the experts, which is really what, and then thereafter, stuff like social media doesn't cost anything, right? Unless you want, we didn't do anything paid. We had no sponsored posts this entire time, right? Virtual, if you have the platform, then the event is already there, but it is compensating people that you're actually, the brain trust folks and stuff like that's really what's going to ultimately pay off in dividends.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. And one of the questions in here is to you, Andrea, about like, do you think other filmmakers in the disability space are going to be approaching you to do their impact campaigns? Is this a whole new company that you're developing because you're groundbreaking?
We have been approached and we're being approached, and that is, you talk about the hugest honor that people see, for lack of a better phrase, the impact. What I'm grateful for, and we hope people know, is that we really are about supporting films, disability or not, that really represent who we are as, multiply, as people with multiple identities, I identify as a Black disabled woman. That means that I bring that with me wherever. And so I think Crip Camp resonated so much, and it hit us in such a way that it was like, oh my goodness, this is brilliant, this is great. And what we're finding is that we are having to make, it's like, what as a team resonates with us? What are the stories that, because just because it has what I'm saying is, just because it has disability in the name doesn't mean that it's automatically something that's going to align with the values that we, essentially stand for, and that it's going to kind of the disability justice model and all of that stuff. And so I'm grateful that we're in a space where we can kind of say, yes, that does align. Yes, it doesn't. And it doesn't, like I said, always mean disability. We've been approached by some incredible projects that are aiming to amplify other, voices and other marginalized communities. And we're excited about those as well.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because I think you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that you've talked about is that intersectionality, and the idea, I mean, the things that you have done in this campaign can be replicated in other ways for other types of films. But I think the point about like the alignment with values and your beliefs is so powerful. And I think that has always got to be at the center of the work that we do. I mean, I think this work is all, too difficult to not be connected to our heart and spirit. I really appreciate you saying that. There's a couple of other questions in here. One is any advice that you have for people, specifically it's saying from people within the disability community to break into television and writing. And I don't know, Nicole, if you've had thought, it sounds like people are coming to this project also talking about that. You've got maybe some partnerships with the film industry.
Yeah, well, there's been a really great kind of thing that's happened kind of organically out of the film and Andrea's work, which is this 1 in 4 coalition, which, it came from a talent manager in Hollywood, Erin Brown, watching Crip Camp, learning about the impact work, and as a disabled woman herself, realizing that she was the only executive in Hollywood that she could think of that was identified as disabled. And it caused her to kind of similar to the kids at Jened, to sort of realize how much of the discrimination she was facing was structural, and how that impacted the paucity of disability representation in Hollywood. And so, she connected with me, and I connected her to Jim and Andrea, and Andrea, you can talk better than me about 1 in 4. But it is kind of like, I feel like things are shifting and people are looking to build opportunities in the industry and pathways into it that haven't existed before.
Yeah, do you want to share a little bit about 1 in 4, Andrea?
Sure, absolutely. Slightly shameless plug, a huge article came out in the LA Times today about it. But basically, and in the world of Zoom that we live in, my dog is currently eating her dinner. She's been waiting for 20 minutes. So just so if you hear that in the background, she was like, okay, it's 6 o'clock, it's way past time. Anyway, so 1 in 4, it's basically a coalition of disabled folks in Hollywood that are working in various aspects of the industry. And it's really the acknowledgement that disability has not been both in front of and behind the camera considered well and or enough. And even when we think about this push for intersectionality, for diversity, equity, inclusion, that disability is not included in those narratives, whether that's, in set design, whether that's in, hiring disabled actors, hiring disabled folks on set, and then events. And Erin tells stories of like going to events and not being accessible based on her physical disability. So it's very much the nothing about us without us model that that we haven't seen in Hollywood ever, I think, is where the entire coalition is made up of disabled folks to push that media representation both in front of and behind the camera. So super excited about where that's going, and it's getting so much traction already.
That's beautiful. I mean, that, yeah, I'm excited to hear about that. I think our audience is probably really happy to hear about that too. It'd be great for people to know how to get in touch with that, them. Is that on the website as well? People can.
Yeah, so 1 in 4 Coalition. If you can follow them on the social medias, and our team is supporting is doing that. So the very same amazing Sophia that does Crip Camp is also leading 1 in 4 socials now. So that's a great way. And then there's also a corresponding website.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I also saw on your website that you're partnering with Adobe for filmmakers. Can you tell a little bit about that? Is that still open, or?
So no, so Adobe, basically, we had an amazing opportunity to connect with them to build, again, they have done a pretty, all of their programming around storytelling is so huge. And so we had an opportunity to connect with them. And actually, Nicole may even be able to give the origin stories, because I can't even remember how we initially connected with Adobe, but basically to amplify and to support disabled creatives and activists in their work. And so we've had this ongoing partnership with them to build programming. And so that's really cool as well. And Nicole, if you want to give origins, you feel free.
Well, basically, we were trying to figure out a way to partner with Adobe, and we had kind of reached out to them to see if they would be interested in supporting the project. And then, Stacy and Andrea were like, "Oh, let us dream up exactly what we would want to do with that relationship," and went and pitched this fellowship idea, which was all you guys. But I also wanted to just say, to answer the earlier question, that Jim, kind of midway through the process of working on Crip Camp, got together with some other disabled filmmakers at the IDA conference in LA and started this organization called Forward Doc, Filmmakers with Disabilities Doc. So I would definitely look that up. I don't know if the person asking the question is a documentary filmmaker or writer, but I think that that's an incredible group of people who are also doing a lot of really great work in the industry.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, I know a few of the people who are in that doing really powerful work. Just some amazing work that's happening, and some have been part of the Media Maker Fellowship at BAVC. So we're excited to support makers. I think the last question, I don't think we have that much time left. So the last question that's on here was, what are your next projects? Like I did ask that this is continuing on. We know that this impact campaign has a long life. I mean, obviously it has a long life ahead of it, but also what else is happening, if you're interested in or able to share anything.
You want to go for it, Nicole?
Go ahead, Andrea.
Well, oh my goodness. I mean, the greatest gift that I received from the campaign is the relationships that we've built. Obviously, like Nicole and Jim and Sarah, and then being able to honestly build. When I came into this work, it was me as a team of one, and so the consulting firm that kind of has supported the impact campaign has grown because of the work that has come from what the opportunities that we've had within the film. And so we are like beyond swamped in all of the best ways, whether it's, supporting organizations from a virtual accessibility standpoint, whether it's training on disability justice and kind of the philosophies behind the campaign, whether it's supporting from a marketing perspective because of how we, approach marketing and social media 1 in 4 is one of our big projects that we're taking on as a team. So we're just, and then film for sure. Impact production is now it has somehow like entered our veins in a way that we did not even, I didn't see it coming, and I don't think that any of us did. But, you know, as we come up next week on the anniversary of Stacy's passing, it's been a huge time of reflection, you know, I can say for me, in terms of just the opportunity to continue to do what she did, which is dream big, and, you know, to carry on that legacy of, you know, affecting pretty radical change. So we're committed to that in whatever ways we can.
Yeah, you know, I think that there are definitely a couple of projects that I'm working on that are direct sort of spin-offs or offshoots of Crip Camp that are, you know, staying connected to Jim and the story and folks in the community. And then I'm also developing and starting to work on a couple of other projects that are interestingly kind of also from the same time period in the 1970s, but more focused around women's issues. So everything feels like it's still connected to the kind of core values and the core that core story, which is really wonderful. And I'm excited to continue to work to support the evolution of the 1 in 4 Coalition as an ally, and the work around representation and access in Hollywood.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Like, this has just been very inspiring to me. And I'm sure I'm looking at the comments in the chat and people are like, this talk was very enlightening and inspiring. Thank you. There was also a comment from my friend Keith Wilson who said, Andrea's celebrity dog is now part of the chat. So thank you for mentioning your dog. And we'll have to go and follow them. Oh, any last thoughts that you'd like to share? I mean, I think we have a couple of minutes to close. I know we could continue talking. There's so many fascinating parts of this campaign and of both of your lives and the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for this work. It's really beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. I wonder if we have a couple of minutes. I just want to shout out the incredible work that the Impact team did around the Oscars, you know, which was like just the dog comment made me think of it, but like, you know, that was an opportunity. It was going to be we knew it was going to be this quick thing, you know, our team on the red carpet. And we really strategized and put a lot of work into making the most of that moment. And I thought Andrea did a brilliant job of it, so that it stood for something beyond just like a couple of filmmakers and their film there at the event.
I loved it. I sat on the edge of my seat. I loved your dress, Andrea. I didn't know if we were going to get a chance to talk about this. That was really hot and beautiful. It was amazing. Jim's suit was incredible. That was great. I mean, you know, there's like that part of the Oscar piece that was kind of like, you know, that piece, the photos were great. All of it's great. And what an incredible platform, and how much really amazing media came out of it. Congratulations for that too. I mean, personally, I feel it was stolen. So but that's, you know, just my opinion, but I think you all did an amazing job. And yeah, we could talk about that forever. I loved all of it, and congratulations on that. Thanks to our ASL signers, interpreters, you're amazing people. Thank you so much. And I think we have to sign off and wave goodbye. You're all great. This is super fun. Thank you, Howard. Thanks, Brittany. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.